All right. Thank you so much for joining us. It's time to get started. I'm really excited to welcome you all to another Nava Labs demo day. My name is Jillian Hammer, and I'm the designer and researcher for the Form Filling Assistant project. Before we dive in, we'll start by giving some quick context about our team here at Nava. Nava is a public benefit corporation working to make government services simple and effective. And today's project sits within the philanthropically funded division of Nava called Nava Labs. And at Nava Labs, we build and test new approaches to delivering public services and cultivate partnerships to advocate for scaling any of those proven solutions. Currently, the team at Nava Labs is building a set of tools that use AI to support caseworkers as they help their clients navigate in and enroll in safety net programs. And today's project, the Form Filling Assistant, is just one of those tools. These are all open source tools that Labs has been building across multiple different states and with multiple different nonprofit organizations. And they're all focused on giving caseworkers time back to connect with the families that they serve. This project in particular is a partnership between the Riverside County Children and Families Commission, which is also known as First Five Riverside County, who are our government partners, and Amplify, our nonprofit partners. And folks from both First Five and Amplify have really shared their knowledge and experience working on the ground with clients and families to help us build the tool. And through our collaboration, we've been able to think holistically about some of the real world workflows and integration challenges that come with this work as the tool is developed. Today, I'm joined by Fod Green, our engineering lead on the project, and a very special guest, Ani Avila, who is a social services practitioner at First Five Riverside County. So a quick heads up of what to expect in this hour. We'll include a demo and a tech stack. That's where we'll start. And then we'll spend the rest of the time sharing what we've learned from piloting with caseworkers in Riverside and how we're iterating based on their feedback. We're going to save at least the last 10 minutes for Q&A, so feel free to add any questions that you have in the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll try our best to get to them and address them either throughout the presentation or during the live Q&A as well. So before showing the demo, we'll do a really quick introduction of the project itself. We always like to start by centering on our end users who are caseworkers, specifically in Riverside County. They're frontline staff who meet with families in person to have a really open-ended conversation about what support that they need, including applying for benefit programs. Staff told us that they spend about half of their time with families just navigating applications and filling out forms. So knowing this real-world challenge kind of led us to our hypothesis that a submission agent could make it easier for caseworkers to assist families by automating some of those more repetitive form filling tasks. I think we'll know if this tool adds value if it actually makes it easier for caseworkers to submit and apply for benefits with their client, and B, if it actually enables them to submit more accurate applications. And as you can imagine, there are so many consequential factors to consider when we're thinking about applying for benefit programs. And as we've built and tested this initial proof of concept, we've learned a lot of lessons that we're excited to share with y'all today. Really, though, in these early phases, our goal is simply just to validate whether or not the technology even works for form filling in the first place. And if it does, if caseworkers would find value in using the tool. If you joined us at our last demo day back in December, you may remember that we had just finished phase 1 of the pilot, which were scoped down to more moderated usability sessions. And now fast forward to today, we recently kicked off our second phase of the pilot, and Riverside staff now have access to the tool in production, and they're beginning to use it with their clients to complete and submit applications, which is really exciting. From here, I'll pass the mic to Fod to show our latest demo and talk through how it works.
Hey everyone, I'm Fod Green. I'm the technical lead on this project. And so what exactly have we built so far? I'm going to walk us through a quick demo of our form filling assistant so you can see the latest prototype in action. In this scenario, we'll show a caseworker is sitting down with a client named Rosa Flores. They decided Rosa should apply for the WIC program. Watch how the agent streamlines this process. The caseworker starts by simply providing Rosa's client ID number and pasting the URL for the WIC application. The AI immediately gets to work. It pulls in Rosa's record from the database while simultaneously setting up the browser to navigate to the application. After the AI finishes scanning, it will start to work on a set of missing info questions that appear on the left. So just pause for just a couple seconds, we'll show that appear. And yep. So pausing here to highlight a crucial feature, this is what we're calling an upfront gap analysis. Instead of blindly starting the form and getting stuck halfway through, the agent scans the entire application and compares it against the data we already have for Rosa. It identifies exactly what is missing, like her medical status and appointment preferences, and it asks the caseworker for that specific information right at the start. This saves them a massive amount of back and forth. And so the caseworker quickly asks Rosa these missing questions, fills them into the assistance panel on the left, and then it hits submit. In a short matter of time, the agent starts to take the database information, combines it with the caseworker's new answers, and physically driving the browser to fill out the form. You can see this in the tool groupings on the left as it is typing text, filling out fields, selecting radio buttons, handling dropdowns, and cleanly adding these into a collapsible card as it sends messages. And so just coming up here, notice when the agent gets to the question, please choose your WIC clinic closest to you. We only have the participant's address, so the agent takes its best guess at the right location. And it just does a little bit more tool calls to get the last of this application ready. And then it's about to generate the summary. So if you look at the left panel now, this agent provides a clear summary and importantly shows the data provenance. It tells you exactly which data came from the system database, which was provided by the caseworker, and which was calculated by the AI. You'll also notice it intentionally stops before the CAPTCHA and the submit button. We enforce this so the caseworker always has the final review. And so now let's say the caseworker reviews the form and realizes Rosa actually wanted to add phone and video options for her appointments. She wants to select all possible options to schedule that WIC appointment as soon as possible. Watch what happens next. Now we're in takeover mode. The caseworker can take control of the browser away from the AI at any time to make manual adjustments. The caseworker manually checks the virtual and telehealth boxes on the actual web form and then hands it back to the AI. Notice what the AI does. It's taken that quick snapshot, recognized the exact manual changes that were made, logs them, and continues with the form as it was. Now it's ready. Now it works with a caseworker and adapts with these manual overrides. And yeah, that's basically our demo with a successful submission in practice. So I'm going to talk about what makes our agent work. I'll share a bit about our tech stack first. We use Vercel AI SDK to run the chat interface, the agent loop, and something called generative UI that I'll come back to later. The way the agent loop works is Claude calls a tool. The SDK executes it and streams the result back into the chat, and Claude then decides what to do next. That loop can run for hundreds of steps in a single conversation, and that can last sometimes over 20 minutes without user intervention. The model provider that has consistently performed the best for us on browser use is Claude. We're currently using Claude Sonnet 4.6, and we run that through GCP Vertex AI. Running through GCP Vertex AI gives us the zero data retention that for client data that is processed on inference only. So it's never stored and it's never used to train the model. For browser automation, we use Agent Browser, which is an open source CLI tool from Vercel Labs built in Rust. It's designed specifically for AI agents to navigate the web. Instead of sending raw HTML to the model, Agent Browser returns a compact accessibility tree where every interactive element gets a reference or a ref. That snapshot is about 200 tokens instead of 3,000 tokens or more from a raw HTML snapshot, which is roughly a 90% reduction in the context window usage. And because it's a Rust binary, Agent Browser is, and it's talking to a long running background task, most of these actions are completed under 200 milliseconds. The actual browser that runs in the cloud is through kernel. Kernel spins up a Chrome browser instance in an isolated VM, like a virtual machine, and this is SOC 2 Type 2 certified, and also comes with stealth mode and things like anti-bot detection built in. What's impressive about kernel is the speed. It's taking us under 300 milliseconds to launch and connect to the browser. That really matters here because we're creating a browser sessions on demand for each caseworker chat. So we really need that to feel instant for that experience. And lastly, all of our infrastructure runs on GCP. Our application runs on Cloud Run serverlessly. Our database is on Cloud SQL, and the whole environment is VPC networked on GCP's FedRAMP High infrastructure. So no data leaves that boundary. Okay, so let's walk through the how this browser what the browser looks like and what is actually happening here. In the center, you'll have the cloud browser. So this is the Chrome instance that's running on kernel. One API called a kernel returns two URLs, and those two URLs create two paths. On the left is the agent path. We take the CDP WebSocket URL, which we're calling CDP WS URL here, and we connect to it with Playwright via Agent Browser. From there, the agent can send commands like filling a field or clicking a button. Each command comes back with a structured response telling us whether it succeeded. So we see that in step 4 here, success and output. On the right is the caseworker's path. We take the live view URL and embed that as an iframe directly into the chat interface, which is what we saw in the demo. The caseworker is watching the exact same browser session that the agent is controlling. So every click and field fill, they'll see happen in real time. On the infrastructure side, again, Cloud Run is running on a session affinity. So we're using sticky sessions where every request is pinned to the same server instance. This is important because this means that the Playwright connection and all of the reference mappings for that page persist in memory across the entire conversation. So we're not using something like an external state store like Redis. All right, so let's talk about what makes our agents fast, safe, and stateful across these long-running tasks. On this diagram, we're showing the core loop the agent runs on every single page of a form. So there are 4 steps, and it repeats until the form is complete. Step 1 is the snapshot. The agent calls the snapshot tool, gets back that accessibility tree from Agent Browser with references. So it sees the first name is ref E2, and the next button is ref E4. That's the agent's view of the page in that snapshot. Step 2 is act. The agent fills in the fields it can. So for first name, it uses a fill command, which sets the value programmatically. And that's fast, and it works great for plain text input. But for something like a social security number, we'll need to use a type command instead of a fill. So type actually sends real keystrokes one at a time. The reason is because government sites often have a JavaScript input mask on top of these fields for things like social security number and phone numbers. If you try to set those programmatically with fill, the value silently fails because the mask's event handlers will never fire. The distinction between fill and type is something we learned the hard way while iterating on this particular process, and it does matter on a lot of these sites. Okay, so jumping to step 3 here, the agent takes another snapshot to confirm the values are actually stuck, which basically means like, did they stick on the page when you see it? So if SSN didn't render correctly, like maybe the mask ate the digit, maybe it was typing too fast, then it's actually going to go back and retry. And then finally, step 4 is advanced. The agent clicks the next button, waits for the new page to load, takes a fresh snapshot, and the whole loop then starts again. Okay, so 2 things here make this work reliably across these significant numbers of steps. First, the agent is firing multiple tool calls in parallel using a promise.all. So after that snapshot, it can fill several fields at once, but we have a per session mutex that serializes the actual Playwright commands. So they're never racing each other. They're being serialized so they come out one at a time, but have already been ready to execute. And second, coming back to session affinity, the browser connection persists in memory for the entire conversation. So if we think about it, the browser itself is the state. And I'll just jump in here to a really important newer pattern that is really important for context. It's called agent skills. The agent needs to know a lot of things, like how to handle these mass fields or custom dropdowns or modals that are just very tricky. And most importantly, how to communicate with the caseworker without using technical jargon about the browser state or the DOM. If you put all that into the system prompts, every single request is going to burn thousands of tokens on instructions. The agent might not even need that for a particular step. context windows are finite. And so on a 200-step form fill, every extra token in the prompt really compounds on every step. So imagine 200 steps, and that all of your skill files are being read every time. You would burn through your context window quite quickly here. So we employed a new agent pattern called skills. And this has 3 tiers. And you can see the file structure here on the right. It's just a file tree. The first tier is always loaded. These are 9 rules that are injected into the request every time. They have a tiny footprint and they're non-negotiable. So things that are that we're always going to use, something like a snapshot reference or use type instead of fill for mass fields, and never mention terms about the browser state to caseworkers. The second tier is loading once. Before the agent takes its first browser action, it calls a load skill tool and gets the full playbook. So the snapshot strategy loop, form submission protocols, and a further progressive disclosure of communication rules. That gets cached for the rest of the conversation, so it only costs us tokens once. The third tier is on demand. When the agent hits a specific situation, like a tricky React modal, it'll call read skill file. It's a read skill file tool to pull just that chapter from the references directory. You can see those files at the bottom of the tree here. So we see form submission, modals, form automation. These are all just examples. The important thing is we can add new protocols as needed without touching the system prompt because these are just markdown files. So this is the architecture. I'm going to hand it back over to Jillian now. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Fad. Yeah, so now that you've seen what the tool does and heard a little bit about how it works, we'll spend the rest of the time talking about how caseworkers in Riverside are responding to the second phase of this pilot. To be specific, our participants are 11 caseworkers who represent all 5 of the family resource centers located across Riverside County. Specifically, their official job titles are community health workers and social services practitioners. And they serve a range of different communities across Riverside County. You know, Riverside's really big, the communities are all different. And in that way, we can get a lot of really well-rounded feedback from the staff about how this tool does or doesn't fit into their workflow and matches the needs of their communities that they serve. To get a sense for what the workload for them looks like now, we conducted a baseline survey. And of all of the 11 staff who responded, they serve on average about 13 clients per week. And 78% of the time they spend at work is spent directly interacting with clients. So in other words, that's almost 4 days out of a typical 5-day work week is spent with their clients. One of the applications that's quite common is for in-home supportive services, and that takes about 73 minutes to complete now. Although that time can really range quite widely based on what the client needs are, if they have to come back over multiple different employments and things like that. They also answered some questions about their current experience and perceptions of AI. 45% of them have reported having no prior experience with any AI tools. So this project is actually their first experience working with generative AI. And a little over half of them believed that there would be an equal mix of benefit versus harm when it comes to using AI tools in human services. So we're really, excited and curious to see how this changes or evolves over time. When we conduct an endpoint survey at the end, we'll be able to sort of look at, this baseline versus at the end and see how that's changed. Our overall finding that we shared at our last demo day, I think remains unchanged, that, an agentic AI-driven tool can improve the delivery of human services, but only when that tool is built upon the human expertise and the human relationships that are at the core of this work. Parts of the assistant are working well so far. Generally, the staff are reporting that it's fairly easy to use and to pick up, and that they're excited that they can, maybe save time on form filling and then spend that time instead connecting their clients with more resources or going deeper with them than they otherwise wouldn't have had the time to do. A lot of them have also mentioned that they're excited about this, perhaps expanding their capacity to help clients apply for programs they might not be as familiar with. So we're really excited about those positive signals so far. But we've also heard some really important critical feedback about how the tool may not integrate seamlessly into their client interactions now. Some caseworkers are rightfully worried about how introducing an AI system could be more distracting than helpful. And others noted that the value of the tool really hinges on, the data quality of the database that it's pulling from. So in this case, their case management system. They also noted that the tool needs to be able to elegantly handle, longer and more complex applications or applications that require authentication. So in Riverside's case, like benefits count. But to bring in some on-the-ground perspective, I'm excited to have Ani join us for this part of the presentation. Ani is a social services practitioner at the Desert Hot Springs Family Resource Center in Riverside County, and she's actually one of the very first frontline staff members that we got to meet in person and hear directly from when we met back in July of last year. And she's since been one of the pilot participants who has given us feedback throughout the development process. So Ani, thanks for joining us and thanks for sharing some of your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I'm very excited to be here today.
To start, can you just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your role at First Five and how you help your clients apply for benefit applications today?
Of course. So like I said, everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Anaí Avila, and I'm a social service practitioner 3, as Jillian mentioned. I work out of the Desert Hot Springs office in the desert. So it's been very warm this week. So we're excited to be virtually doing this meeting and, with you guys. So a little bit of what I do, I would say my role overall, as well as my peers and some of our community health workers, would be to connect families to programs and resources. And then First Five might have the concept of just like specifically targeting children 0 to 5, but overall, as a family resource center, we do open up to like the whole family unit. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the families that walk in have to have children. So a lot of these clients that we've been able to pilot this tool with sometimes don't even have kids. So it's been a really good project to work with them in regards to that. So I would say like a typical day-to-day for me would be like meeting with families or individual adults. Specifically here in Desert Hot Springs, I do work with a lot of elderly adults, young single adults, and homeless. So we do have a few clientels that are homeless, and our main goal here is to help them apply for services, and they vary through like different applications. So it could be like Medi-Cal, CalFresh. Occasionally, I specifically don't do WIC just because we are co-located with WIC in our office. So it's just like a quick transition for us, but also explaining sometimes like the eligibility requirements for some of these applications and programs is part of it. And just overall connecting them to those community resources to make sure that they successfully are accessed. So I would say overall, if I were to just condense it to one thing, I would say it's helping families navigate the systems that can sometimes feel overwhelming for them at home. So it's a pleasure to be part of the Family Resource Center for us to help these families out.
Yeah, what struck us when we visited was just hearing about how much sort of one-on-one individual support that you give to every person who walks in, and there's no time limit necessarily on how long someone might stay with you.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. And honestly, I think that's the joyful part of our positions, because it may range from like an hour to 2 hours to 10 minutes. So we have like a different variety and a different flow on a daily basis. So it's great to be this flexible.
Yeah. And I remember that you mentioned, at least back in July, you were seeing like 30 or 35 clients a week.
And honestly, it's picked up a lot more. So we've been busy, and I'm very excited to fully have this application ready to go.
That's a perfect segue into, the next question. So what has it been like participating in, testing? You saw it very early on, and when it was still just an idea and when it still had lots of bugs and things like that. How's it been, seeing a change and providing feedback?
Honestly, it's been interesting just because, like you mentioned, we were probably one of the few beginning to eventually till it ends. And it's interesting because we all have those different clients. So some of the experiences that I might work with or clients that I might have may not be the same as like a community health worker and so on. So I think being able to be a part of this test has been able to help us contribute to that feedback with those real-time client interactions. And like you mentioned specifically, IHSS is one of our big clients, application support needed right now. So I think overall, I appreciate how like the team has been able to be, I mean, this is your team, to open up to other suggestions and improvements that we have. Specifically with like the whole concept of saving time, which is ideally what we're trying to do here, to make sure that these clients are in and out as quick as possible so that we could support them in other ways as well, not just be here for like 2 straight hours doing an application. And the one that is coming to mind right now is Benefits Cal, as you brought up earlier as well. That one I actually just completed one earlier this week, which was like 2 hours. And
wow.
that was with hiccups in between, like having to wait for clients to like provide switch documentation or pay stubs, uploading documents and all that. So I think overall, I'm excited to see the change over time. And I think it's been already a big change from the start. So I already see the time saving concept in such applications that we've been using. But definitely waiting for the Benefits Cal one. Very excited for that one.
Us too, yeah. I guess with the 2 hours spent on Benefits Cal earlier this week, can you walk me through a little bit what you expect the tool will help you with, or how it will integrate or change your workflow now once it's up and running on your end?
I would say probably one of the ones, the impact that it's going to make on the clients, would be one of my main ones. And like I said, we're here for the clients. And I feel like the more productive we are while helping them is going to keep the clients coming back. So definitely, I think it could make applications less intimidating and easier for us and for them to complete, because a lot of these clients that come to us are not that tech savvy. So even if it came to the point where like we're teaching them the basic steps of this, and like let's say it takes 5 minutes, I feel like it could be an introduction to them to want to learn how to use these applications at home. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone, because of course, like we're here to support them, but we're also opening up kind of their mentality to technology and like the beauty of it sometimes, of how convenient it could be. I mean, of course, sometimes it's not that great, right? And we need it to work. But I think it should be something that everybody should be open to, because it honestly has great outcomes to it if learned, or if you know how to use it. And then I think it would also help families move through the process more smoothly, like once they know the concept of it and stuff. And then my other one would be the impact on us as staff members, like the impact on time. So just reducing, like you guys mentioned already earlier, the time spent of manually having to like fill out every single section and every single form. So it allows us more to have that like one-on-one rapport with the client and focus on that conversation and engagement and like possibly education and resources that we are able to help them with that support. So I just think overall it would be like what helps build the trust in that tool. And a lot of it comes from us as staff members, letting them know, the bright sides to learning how to use the technology, like the accuracy. And of course, all of this comes like with time, and the more that we tweak it and the more feedback that you guys get to be able to support the clients in that way. So like the ease, the clear instructions, consistency with the programs and the requirements of applications, I think would be one of the big focuses on that.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's something that we're excited about too. And honestly, we didn't necessarily expect going into the work. I think our team tends to be a little bit more conservative, or maybe more conscientious of introducing AI and to a community that might not be as tech savvy, or are coming into FRCs in the first place because they're not as comfortable with technology, that could create moments of distrust or feeling fear, or like making that that technology gap wider. So it's reassuring to us to hear from you and the rest of your team that you have a more optimistic sense of this being sort of a learning opportunity for both you and your client to go through together, and that's exciting.
And honestly, I'm just going to jump in a little bit now that you made that comment. I think as far as my clients, like I haven't really had any hesitation in regards to like opposing to be a part of the AI tool usage. So far, I think we're doing pretty good because we're kind of giving them the pros to it. And then eventually, like I mentioned, if they figure it out that it's like an easy thing to use, they'll probably be like willing to work on it at home on their own and stuff.
Why do you think that is?
That they're not opposing to using the AI tool.
Yeah.
I think it's a, I'm gonna say a lot of it comes from the report that is built with us. Because if they come and they trust us with their work, with personal information, and a lot of these clients are returning clients that we work with for like maybe 1-2 years. I mean, myself, I've been here going on my 4th year. So a lot of these clients already have like known me literally for like 3-4 years. So that trust is already built. So us introducing like these new programs and like workflows and stuff, I feel like since it comes from us that they know us, it's very rewarding for them and like comfortable for them to like accept and easier to say yes.
That's such an amazing testament to, all the genuine relationship building that you all invest in at Family Resource Centers. That's really special. What do you hope for the tool to evolve to next?
Of course, it's going to be an ongoing work with the improvements and stuff based on like the user feedbacks, and like we've been going on and back and forth. Like there's already been some modifications made, specifically the one that you could edit it within the chat. So that one was beautiful. I think that also adds to that time consumption of having to go and exit to like a different area to take control and all that stuff. So that update was really good, and I think it's gonna be very beneficial. Another thing I would probably hope for would be the continuing the support for like the multiple program use. Like I mentioned, I cannot stress when the benefits Cal one's going to be ready. That one is one of our bigger ones, and it's become very popular lately, as well as with the IHSS. So I think that one, once that is ready to go, like I think would probably be golden with that one. And then just probably the other one would be the multilingual option, with including Spanish and some of the other languages, which I think we're already kind of in the works with that. Here in Desert Hot Springs, most of our populations are English speaking, I would say, but we do have those Spanish speaking clients as well, and like more out with our neighboring Family Research Center, which is Mecca. Most of them are mainly Spanish speaking, so definitely this tool would be great with that multilingual option, and just making it, I think, accessible as well. The other one with the for families with limited technology experience is my other hope. Just because, for example, if they find it easy to use when they're here in our office, like can they take it back home, and like would it work the same on a cell phone or like on a tablet? Like what would the layout be? Because I specifically have not tried using it out of like a cell phone or anything with a client. It's been just strictly desktop or like laptop. But it's something that I was playing with in my head. Like, well, what happens like if the clients are comfortable enough to take it back home and they either only have like their cell phone or they have a tablet? Like, would it be the same concept in regards to like the view and the ease of it? So I think definitely that would be my next hope for the tool, to see how it can simplify that process even probably more.
Thanks for sharing. Those are all great ideas, and things that we've touched on in different ways throughout the project. Right now, Benefits Cal does technically work with the tool. It's just Benefits Cal is so long and there's so many questions. So we're trying to like fine tune and tweak the UI so it, it takes some of the missing questions and puts them up front, so it's a little bit less tedious for the staff to go through. And on the language front, right now the agent can respond in Spanish if the caseworker types or interacts with the agent in Spanish, but it defaults to being in English. But those are all like different sort of preferences that we can think about surfacing that the caseworker could have more control over, so they can sort of customize what experience they're looking for. Cool. Okay, our last question, I kind of wanted to start, or I wanted to end on more of a high level and ask you about what are some of the biggest challenges that you and the families that you serve still face when you're navigating, the social safety net system? And what do you wish could be solved for, even if it's not, in the scope of this project?
The biggest challenges. I think right now it would just be like the complexity of the application process itself. The language barrier, I could see how it could like be a hinder, but I would say more the complex application process and knowing or them not knowing the process of it. So like if they don't know like requirements or if they don't know like certain characteristics that need to be a part of those applications, I feel like that could be one of the challenges that they could face. But of course, I mean, if we're working together in the office and whatnot, so it makes that a little bit easier. And then the other one, which I think I covered in one of our previous questions, was probably just the limited internet or technology access that they could possibly face, since it is AI and it's tech savvy stuff. So our younger generation adults, I don't see how they would have a problem, but it's more like the older adults, the homeless population, because sometimes they don't have phone services or they don't have that access to a computer, iPad. The most they sometimes come with is like those government phones, and it's like just a flip phone, so it's not even a smartphone. So in that end, like that's when we come in place and we provide either the computer or like the iPad. So mainly for them, everything would be in-house. And of course, we're here to help them. But of course, we also want to make sure that they are what's it called? Self-sufficient. So that is one of our goals here also, to make sure that they know how to utilize the resources to the max. So hopefully that doesn't become a bigger problem. But as of now, we've been pretty good about being able to assist them. And then what else would I say? I think that would be it. And just like the tools like this I would say definitely simplify the processes, but families still would probably benefit from some guidance in regards to like certain explanations and eligibility requirements and whatnot. But so far, I think everything is looking dandy and in the right direction. So we're very excited to be a part of this project.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful to have you and the rest of the team at First 5 partners with us in this work. You all do such amazing, important work with your communities, and we're very grateful that you also spend the time with us to work on this project. So thank you. And if anyone else has questions for Anaí, please feel free to use the Q&A panel too, and we'll try to direct those to Anaí as well at the end. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned before, sort of preserving those like human relationships and the human expertise is really required for this tool to be successful. You heard Anaí talk about that as well. So in this section, we'll kind of go through what that looks like in practice. Fuad and I will kind of walk through 3 different ways that this manifests for us on the project and some of the feature and design decisions that we've made along the way. So I'll start with number 1. Encouraging more complete applications. So our principle is that it should be easy for users to submit more complete applications in order to reduce the amount of like downstream rejections that happen due to missing information. So in our initial prototypes, we tested a flow in which the AI fills out all of the application first and then presents the user with a list of the information that's missing. And what we heard in testing with Anaí and others is that the most time-consuming part of the process is not actually filling out the form. It's actually tracking down like all of those missing documents, because clients might have to go home or call someone and to try and track down a pay stub or a bill and then come back on a separate visit. So in reality, this sort of initial flow that we had mocked up here meant that caseworkers wouldn't find out what clients were missing until the very end of the flow. So that could block them from submitting. So in this next iteration of this, with this newer feedback in mind, we made some changes, which you'll see here, and that Fuad also sort of highlighted in the demo as well. In addition to making a prompt change, so the agent cross-references what it has in the database versus what it's missing at the beginning of the flow rather than at the end. That's integrated here. And we also decided to, instead of displaying everything as sort of like a static bulleted list, we have it designed as an interactive card component that allows staff to plug in the data more directly into these editable fields. And our hope is that by surfacing some of that missing information and making it really easy to input the information all in one spot, that it'll result in more complete applications being submitted than they otherwise would be. And I'll let Fawn talk about how this feature was built with GenUI.
Awesome. Thanks, Jillian. Yeah, so I'll just touch a bit on, so Jillian just showed you the interaction where missing info gets captured at the start and the caseworker fills in the gaps in line. So I'll just show you what's happening on the technical side to make that work. The question on this slide is, how does the LLM choose to render from a library of base components? The answer is what we're calling generative UI. Generative UI can take different flavors. In this case, the agent has a tool called gap analysis. When the agent calls it, it's passing in an input schema, an array of fields where each field has a label, an input type, and a set of options. The input type can be something like an input text or a date or a multi-select with checkboxes. The agent decides which type fits best based on what it knows about the form it's about to fill. So, for example, if the agent, if the agent sees that what is your preferred language question has a fixed set of options, it's going to pass in an input type of select along with those options that we render in a dropdown. And then, if it's a question like, what is Rose's health coverage for her household, which needs multiple answers, the agent sets that input type to multi-select to true, and we render a checkbox group. The idea is that the agent is not guessing at a layout, it's describing what it needs, and our React component library, in our React components, read that schema and render the appropriate input type. The same base components all get reused throughout the entire flow. They show up here at the start for the gap analysis card and when the gap analysis follow-ups are needed. And they also show up at the end for the review summary that we saw in the demo recording earlier. So I'll pass back over to Jillian now.
Cool. Our second practice has been to develop a system that complements that face-to-face, more conversational workflow that staff already have with their clients rather than distracting from it. Our first instinct was to display all of the agent's actions to maximize the amount of visibility that a staff member would have while the agent is working. You can imagine that we wanted to do that because of all of the privacy reasons, all the security reasons, all the accuracy reasons. We wanted to make sure that everything was sort of out in the open so that they can see what was going on. But in testing, caseworkers really universally told us that this experience was far too overwhelming. The chat's moving really fast on its own. The agent actions really get buried and lost in that. And it's difficult to track both the moving chat and the browser on the right-hand side at the same time. So, trying to ask them to do that all while sitting with the client who, deserves their undivided attention is kind of a lot. So to address this feedback, we started by looking at how other LLMs have approached the same sort of design challenge. Some products like Claude and its more general use case have like a visual indicator that sort of pulses without giving too much information about the weeds of what it's doing. Whereas vibe coding products like Figma Make here is, on the other, they kind of tend to show lots of all the model's reasoning. And in the end, we kind of felt like our use case falls somewhere in the middle between these two ends of the spectrum. And as you saw in the demo video, we adapted this visual pattern of a more collapsible accordion and made a lot of intentional decisions around what information we'd want to display. For us, it's very tempting to want to display all the tool calls and processing details because we're a technical team. We have that bias towards wanting the information for traceability and debugging and things like that. But we had to focus on what this client, how the tool will be used with a client from a caseworker's perspective. And they don't need to know all the technical details. They just need to see at a glance, what is the agent doing? What is the outcome of what it's done? As in, what exactly did it fill out? What did it click on? What exactly did it type? And did they enter it correctly? So with this new approach, the agent's actions are instead, something that a client can opt into seeing. So say a client is really curious or concerned about wanting to see how the agent is handling their data. the caseworker is able to show them on the interface directly. Or if the client is just looking to have more of a conversation with the caseworker can kind of let the application run in the background and focus on that conversation instead. Lastly, and I think most importantly, the tool needs to empower the users as experts. Unlike the staff at Riverside, LLMs don't have domain knowledge. They don't know the nuances of each household situation, like Ani was talking about after developing a relationship for like 3 or 4 years. So really the tool should make it easier for the caseworkers to complete forms, but the caseworkers should still be in the driver's seat, the whole time. From the very beginning, we built in the ability for a user to stop, like literally press a stop button or intervene by taking control at any time during the form filling process. So that's always been sort of baked into the flow. But when we were testing it, we found that despite building in some of those guardrails, a lot of the caseworkers said that they believed the AI would be more accurate in handling client data than they would be as a human who's prone to typos and errors and things like that. This was a surprise to us, even though there is that known existing research that humans have what's called an automation bias, and that we tend to over rely on what an automated system outputs, and we accept what it produces. So since then, we've taken a closer look at adding in a few more like speed bumps into the user interface. So now at the end of the flow, right before submission, we display the scannable card that lists all of the form fields, both complete and incomplete. And the fields that were filled by the AI have a special label next to them that really encourages users to like take a double look at those and double check those before it's submitting. It also has a label for all of the information, whether it's pulled from their database or if it was entered manually by them in the same session. We wanted to display all of that because we felt that it was important to share where each piece of data comes from, because that's sort of an important factor for the caseworker to consider as they're doing their final checks before submission. Another thing to note here is that for the fields that were autofilled by the AI, it does offer some explanation as to why it made that sort of decision or that suggestion or that best guess. So in this case, the example that Fahd highlighted, choosing a location was based on the address that it knew that it had in their database. But if that's inaccurate or if that's wrong or if something's missing, they can easily press the edit button and just directly change that field right there without having to write in the chat or open up the take control mode.
Yeah, and take control mode, or these agent handoffs, is the part we care most about because it's where trust gets enforced into the interface. The core principle is straightforward. The agent fills the form, but it never submits. The caseworker always has the final say. So we can walk through this diagram together. There are 2 modes, and the control flows between them in a cycle. On the left, you have the agent mode. This is where the agent is actively controlling the browser, running the full loop I showed you earlier. The caseworker can see everything happening in the browser iframe, but the iframe is locked. Pointer events are disabled, so even if they click on something, nothing happens. They're watching, not interacting. When the agent finishes filling out the form, it does not try to submit. Instead, it calls the form summary tool, which renders the review card Jillian just showed us. When the caseworker is ready, they click Take Control. That's the button on the top of the diagram here. When they click it, 2 things happen immediately. First, it calls stop to abort the AI stream. And an abort signal races any in-flight playwright commands, so they reject cleanly. The agent is fully paused. Second, the iframe unlocks. The pointer events switch to auto, and the read-only flag is removed, and caseworker now has full keyboard and mouse control of the browser. So this is user mode on the right side of the diagram. They can review the form, edit anything they need to, and submit it themselves. If the caseworker wants to hand back control to the agent, say if they have to continue filling to the next section of a multi-page form, they can click the Give Back Control, which is the button here at the bottom of the control flow. That sends a message to the agent for the agent to take a fresh snapshot of wherever the caseworker had left off, and it continues from there. The cycle can repeat really as many times as needed. And underneath all of this, there are 3 safety guarantees that ensure the agent can never submit on behalf of the caseworker. First, the system prompt guardrails explicitly instruct the agent to never click submit buttons. Second, the form summary tools render that review card instead of submitting. The agent literally does not have a tool to submit forms. And third, the browser iframe is disabled on pointer events until that caseworker explicitly takes control. Excuse me. So three layers here is the prompt and the tool and then the UI. They're all used, so there's no single point of failure that can result in something like an unauthorized submission. So with that, I'll pass back over to Jillian.
Yeah. Thanks, Fod. It's time for us to wrap up. Sorry, we're running a little bit behind schedule. We want to save enough time for Q&A, but just as a quick look ahead to next steps, we'll be wrapping up our pilot within the next few months, and you can look forward to hearing the final readout of how it went, I would say late spring, early summer. But if you're interested in partnering with us, we're really interested in expanding to more locations and partnering with more organizations outside of Riverside County. So please reach out if you're interested in partnering with us or funding some more of this work. And of course, keep following along with our progress on our website and through our newsletter. We continue to share out things that we're learning in between these demo days. So, okay, thank you so much. I will stop sharing and try and answer some of the questions that we haven't gotten to yet asynchronously. Let's see. One question I think we could speak on is, has Nava considered pairing this tool with a natural language tool that could listen to a conversation between a caseworker and a neighbor/client and actually capture the household intake info that could be then fed into both the CBO's CRM system and or the benefit applications? The short answer is yes. We haven't been able to really build out a full proof of concept yet, but it is something that we've heard a lot from staff at Riverside. One of the mantras that Ani might be familiar with at Riverside is this idea that clients should only have to tell their story once, and they do mean that in the physical way, and that like if they tell their story one time to Ani, they want that story and that information to be carried on with them into a future visit, so they don't have to reiterate those stories and information.
I would also say that we are actively scoping proposals for philanthropic funding to work with lots of organizations to build out those proofs of concept and make them available as open source tools for the ecosystem. So if you are an organization that's interested in looking at expanding it to have more of those like voice inputs and things like that, we would love to chat about that.
I could jump in with a question from Simon Raw. How do you handle cases and clients that require multiple sessions to complete the form? It sounds like the current tool is for a single session, and this is correct. We're limiting the browser actions to a single session. But if you think about the way that we often use the browser, you can always open a new tab, and so Playwright and Agent Browser both have the ability to use a new tab functionality. So this is something we are very interested in. We want to make sure that when we do share a feature like this with our users, it makes sense as an experience to them, as opposed to overwhelming with multiple tabs and multiple agents streaming along. So yeah, so to answer your question, the capability does exist. I think what's more interesting is how does that get conveyed to the end user.
One good question from Lizzie. I think Genevieve, you might be able to answer this question the best. I'm curious what kind of approvals Riverside had to get to participate in the pilot.
That's a good question. I know that they had to get permission from the first 5 is actually a commission in Riverside County. So they had to get permission from the commission. And then we had to establish a data sharing agreement that made it very clear that we're not saving any of the client data and, you know, making it super clear where the data goes, that the agent is sort of, where's it pulling from? Where does it end up in the applications, and what we're doing with any information that is new that comes up in the process.
I could attempt to answer another one here. That's okay. How are we doing on time? Okay? Got a couple more minutes. So this one's from Trent Williams. Does the agent help explain what is being asked for and where it might be found? As mentioned earlier, sometimes collecting all the documents and knowing what they are is the hardest part? This is a great question as well, because a lot of these times these forms can be intimidating. The agent does in its inline messages with the tools, it does do a good job at explaining what is happening. But also in the tool cards themselves, we focused on making these components, with high accessibility. So when a field doesn't make sense, we actually have tooltips that you can hover over to learn more about that field. So we're constantly also trying to use our skills approach to create a better communication approach for the agent as it conveys information, not just to the caseworker, but to the participant. So bottom line is accessibility and education are of these government forms are very top priority for us.
I think we have time for one more question. Ani, I kind of want to tag team this one with you. Simon's question, what are the key pain points that the form filling assistant addresses? What comes to mind for me is reducing the amount of copy and pasting you have to do, or reiterating the same questions to your client. If a form is asking for an address multiple times and you have to keep asking them, oh, what's your address again? What is it again? What is it again? But I would like to hear from you what your impressions are.
Definitely, I would say that would be one of them. And I guess more because we have another platform that we need to fill out prior to starting any work with the client. So we're going from, for example, the program we use, Apricot. So we have to screen them with that first, and then once again, like you mentioned, Jillian, okay, let's start again. What's your first name? What's your last name? What's your address? So definitely in that sense, it does help with that, because it's just a matter of copying and pasting our Apricot number, and then it pre-fills everything. But definitely that would be one that does come to mind.
Thank you. Okay, we're right at time. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of the questions, but we'll write people's names down and we have contact information so we can follow up after this. But thank you again for joining. Have a good rest of your days. See you next time.